So,
Perfect.
welcome everybody to tonight's Finding a Job in Canada workshop.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Keelan. We will be presenting this evening. So thank you so much for joining. It's amazing to see where everyone is located. And we really appreciate you making the time to join as well. So my name is Tiffany. I have been working with Devant for almost 1 year so far. So definitely flew by. I usually facilitate workshops in the evenings that take place on Wednesdays. In terms of my background, I have actually only worked within employment counseling. So a lot of the work that I do involves job search coaching. There's a lot involved with that, a lot of feelings that take place when we're job searching. It's a bit of a roller coaster. You might feel motivated and really wanting to apply for tons of jobs that day. Other times you might feel a little bit discouraged. So I definitely have those chats and conversations with my clients. Anything in regards to resumes, cover letters, mock interviews, I'm definitely the go-to for that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's been a little over 7 years, so definitely some time since I've been in the field. And of course, we have the use of AI, which is also introduced. So that was another thing we always had to learn and pick up on. But yeah, so happy to be here tonight. I will pass it over to Keelan.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining this evening. I am a career coach and student advisor. I've been working with Devant for gosh, I think it's been like 3.5 years now. It's been a while. And I've worked as Devant as a career coach facilitating workshops. You can book one-on-one sessions with me as well. And for a while, I was doing event organization, but not anymore. In my day job, I work as a student advisor at Fleming College. It has been very, very busy with September, and I know that all of you I love how eager and excited everybody is the first few weeks of September to be back to school, which I think is why there's so many of you here this evening, which is absolutely fantastic. I love it. Please feel free to keep the chat going. We have the chat open, and you can also see there's a Q&A function. I will say if you do have like a very specific question that you want answered, I will recommend using the Q&A feature just because the chat goes by quickly. It's easy to miss things when they're in the chat. So if you do have a specific question, please pop it in the Q&A box, and then we will get to questions at the end. Unless it's something like super relevant to what we're talking about, we might answer throughout, but general Q&A, we'll save time for that at the end for that. So welcome again, everybody. And most asked question is about the recording. Yes, you will get the recording sent to you probably tomorrow. It gets uploaded on the Devant YouTube channel, and you will get sent the link whenever it is available.
Perfect. Alrighty, so just a little bit of a background on Devant. They support students, alumni, and newcomers with getting hired in Canada. So far, they have supported over 48, over 48,000 job seekers across Canada. There have been over 500 live expert sessions and events since 2019. And currently, there are over 30 employers with active job opportunities with Devant. So just a few housekeeping rules. So your mics are muted right now, but I believe we can always go in and change that as well. Your video doesn't necessarily need to be on today either. Again, like Keelan mentioned, it is being recorded and you will receive the recording as well. Any questions, post them in the chat, use the Q&A. We will definitely get to it within the hour. And lastly there, if you are interested in any of our other upcoming sessions, there's the link to be able to get registered. I will probably pop that in the chat in a little while. Okay, perfect. So let's get into it. The first point that we have here is in regards to the employer. So when we're applying for jobs, of course, we have that goal of obtaining a source of income, right? That's something that I always share with my clients is that no one necessarily job searches for fun. We job search because we have bills to pay. We're trying to save a little bit if that's even possible right now. And it's very rare that I find we think of things from the employer's perspective. So just to give a little bit of a background and overview, the main goal of the employer is to make money, of course, and to run a successful organization. So when employers and HR are conducting their hiring, the goal is to find qualified candidates quickly and effectively. So they're not going to hire you as a favor or to help you, unless maybe you have a buddy who works there. They might be able to, give you a referral. Sometimes that happens. So we can talk about that in a little bit as well. Um, so they are looking for the best candidate in terms of fit, which can range from technical skills to experience to culture. So there are tons of factors that employers do take into consideration when making a choice. Sometimes, and I've had this happen where I've had clients make it to that third round interview and unfortunately, it comes down to a very minor detail that sets them apart from the other candidate, unfortunately. So it does happen sometimes, and it is unfortunate. Um, so a few questions you want to ask yourself when applying for certain roles is why should the employer hire you? How will their company benefit from having you as an employee? And what's in it for them? So during our interview process, during the pre-screening calls, we want to continuously share and provide, the experiences that you come with. You want to go in with that positive attitude, and enthusiasm. That's the biggest thing. A lot of the feedback that I have heard and received from employers is, the lack of enthusiasm, right? So I know it's not always fun to do interviews. It's a bit daunting depending on how confident you are, but that enthusiasm still needs to be there. You want to show them that you're excited to be a part of the company as well. All right, next is understanding the recruiter. So they go by a ton of different titles. So it might be HR representative, it might be talent acquisition. Some employers do use recruiters to find, screen, and interview applicants for open opportunities within their company. So another title for this too could also even be a headhunter, someone who's hired to specifically fill a role that they have available, and they will search high and low to find that perfect person. Recruiters review resumes, conduct job interviews, and select an employee for the position. Sometimes they may help with the onboarding process when the employee joins the organization. So when I've joined a few different roles, a lot of the contact that I have is, a first initial pre-screening call, of course, setting up the interview, receiving paperwork as well. You have pay stubs, a lot of that legal information that, sorry, not pay stubs, not yet. It will be a void check that you're sending over. And then the next interaction that I have with HR is usually that onboarding. They provide a little bit of a history on the company or organization, and then you're off to work with your direct manager. So the main goal of the recruiter is to find the candidate with the best skills, experience, and personality to fit the job, as we mentioned, quickly and efficiently. All right, so we're just going to go through a few steps of what the recruiting and hiring process looks like in Canada. So I'm sure a few of you have heard of this before. It's our lovely friend called ATS. So ATS stands for Applicant Tracking System. So basically what this means is that there's a system or software in place that companies utilize in order to make, I guess, it will make things a little bit easier for them because they do receive large volumes of candidates and applications, especially in this current market. if an opportunity goes up for, a remote customer service rep or a remote data analyst, they're getting flooded with applications. So the purpose of the ATS and what HR does behind the scenes is that they will include keywords that they're looking to well, basically you will be tailoring your resume, of course, but the more tailored your resume is for that specific opportunity, the higher chance you have of making it to the next stage, which will be an interview or that pre-screening phone call. So that's the first step, is that before your resume even makes it to someone in HR, it gets seen by the ATS first. Next, once it has gone through the ATS, an employer or the recruiter will be taking a look at the resumes that made the cut, that were shortlisted from the batch of resumes and applications that were received. They might be going through this with like a little bit of a finer comb to make a little bit more of an informed decision. They might take a better look at the requirements of the role, what the resumes look like, do your education, your work experience, summary of qualifications, are all of those aligned with what they're looking for? Next is the pre-screening and interviews. So you might receive a phone call with a few pre-screening questions. You might get an email asking you when you're available to meet. I know before virtual interviews used to be really popular. That was like one of the only ways that interviews were taking place. However, with in-office and hybrid resuming, in-person interviews are definitely taking place. Sometimes it is, you have a second round interview, a third round interview. I've had a few clients who have had fourth round interviews. So that in itself can take some time. Next is the background checks. So depending on the role or opportunity that you've applied for, you might have to submit a police clearance. You might have to submit a vulnerable records check. So I know previously when I was working in ECE, that was something that I had to get even to volunteer at a daycare. Background checks also include your references. So if you have not already, please work on obtaining 3 people who are able to vouch for you. I find a lot of the times this is something people kind of forget about until they need that reference. So they're scrambling last minute. To get through people who can, say really great things about you. So please work on maintaining that relationship and that rapport with your references. Maybe it's been a while since you've last reached out to them, check in on them. How was your summer? I didn't hear from you in a while. This is what I've been up to. Just so that, they're up to date with what's been going on in your life. They're able to, again, say really positive, great things about you that will make an impact and a difference on how the employer will also view you as well. Lastly, after all of these steps, you are going to be receiving your offer of employment. So just last week, actually, unfortunately, I had one of my clients face a scam. It was one of those really popular ones where they give you a check to deposit and then they have access to your banking information. Thankfully, she was able to catch it sooner rather than later. She called her bank and she got it sorted. But I just wanted to throw this in there very quickly. That's never something that you're going to have to do for any employer. So please just keep that in mind. I've had a few cases where clients don't even have an interview, but based off of their resume alone, they receive an amazing job offer for like $50, work from home, 30 hours a week. Please, be a little bit mindful. Use Google, go on there, see what people are saying, go on LinkedIn. Are you able to find the people who are offering you these amazing jobs? If not, it's probably a scam. Lastly, we have onboarding. So that is where you're doing your training, you're reading manuals, you're getting to know your colleagues a little bit more. No matter what job you do, where you are, there's always going to be some form of onboarding or training that is a part of the process. So this is a little bit, I know it looks like a lot, but unfortunately, that is what we have set up here. That's why it's really good to even have a buddy during this time as well, someone that you're in contact with, someone who's in the same boat as you. Keep each other motivated, keep each other accountable during this time as well. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Keelan.
Amazing. Thank you, Tiffany. I can take over screen sharing just so we don't have the awkward back and forth. All right. Okay, so before I dive into it, I am going to be talking about popular job boards in Canada, but I want to know what job boards you have heard of or what job boards you have used so far in your job search. Just pop them in the chats. LinkedIn, absolutely. Indeed, Monster, Indeed, LinkedIn, Glassdoor. Yes, Workopolis, amazing. We've got lots of Indeed, lots of LinkedIn. Okay, amazing. We've got a lot of the big ones. Kijiji and Craigslist, very interesting. I would be a little bit wary when using Kijiji and Craigslist just because they do tend to have some scams on there. Most reputable employers are going to use job boards, not necessarily Kijiji or Craigslist. Craigslist and Kijiji can be okay if you are working as like an independent contractor and you're looking for like a short-term gig here or there. But any like full-time permanent position is probably going to be posted on a more traditional job board. Kibby, yes, fantastic. Javon has a partnership with Kibby. I would highly, highly recommend Kibby. Kibby is wonderful and they do a great job at partnering with employers that are open to hiring international students. You can translate it into a bunch of different languages as well, which is amazing. Job bank, which is great. Newspapers, street signs, okay. ZipRecruiter, amazing. You guys have a lot of the big ones, which is great. So you got a lot of them that are on this slide, but please feel free to take a screenshot or like take a picture of your screen or drop them down quickly. This is by no means all of the job boards. Indeed and LinkedIn are the two big ones in Canada. So you guys got those right off the bat. Amazing. Job Bank, a few people also mentioned. So Job Bank is actually a government-run site in Canada. So Canada Job Bank, that doesn't mean that it's only government roles. It's all types of different roles, but it is hosted on a government website. Workopolis, you guys got as well. Charity Village is one that I did not see mentioned in the chat, and it is actually one of my favorite ones. I think that's because I come from more of a social services background, and Charity Village is actually for not-for-profit companies. So Charity Village can be a really great opportunity if any of you are looking for volunteer work. Charity Village is a great go-to because not-for-profit organizations are usually always looking for volunteers. But they also have paid jobs on there as well. When you go on, you can sort by paid roles or volunteer roles, but all the companies in Charity Village are not-for-profits. Monster, a few people said. Glassdoor, a few people said. I love Glassdoor because they have really great information about the company. You can read like anonymous reviews from people who have worked at that company. Indeed also has that feature as well as of more recently. Aluda is also one that used to be very popular. I don't think it's as popular anymore, but it used to be very, very popular. Job Boom is another one. Even just Google. So like if you hop on Google and you type in web developer jobs, it will pull from a variety of different job boards and post them on, or just have them on the main Google page. Company websites is one that I always recommend. Places like especially post-secondary institutions and larger companies will only almost exclusively post roles on their company website. So they won't cross-post these roles on LinkedIn or Indeed. They'll only have them on their company websites. For example, I know that Air Canada does this. Very, very rare to see Air Canada roles being posted on LinkedIn or Indeed. You actually have to go to the Air Canada website and go to their careers page and then see all the job postings there, which I actually think is a good strategy as a job seeker, because I always say that the more difficult it is for you to find the job posting, the fewer applicants there's going to be. So LinkedIn and Indeed are great. But as you can see in the chat, that's also where everybody else is going. Everybody's going to LinkedIn, everybody's going to Indeed, which is why sometimes you see roles on Indeed that have like 500 applicants within the first 24 hours of it being posted, because everyone is going on Indeed. Whereas if you go to places like company websites or more niche job boards, fewer people are going to find those job postings, which means fewer applicants, which means your chances of getting an interview are much higher than if you apply to a role on Indeed or LinkedIn that everyone else is applying to as well. All right. So I am going to actually share my screen and hop over to the LinkedIn job board, because again, LinkedIn and Indeed are some of the most popular. And I just kind of want to go over some of the features that they have, because they do have quite a few that I find people don't know about. Let me hop over and do that. All right, so we are over on LinkedIn. I'm going to go right to the job tab here, actually. And if somebody could pop in the chat, any job title at all. It can be a job that you want. It can be the first job that comes to your head. I just need an example. Bookkeeper, perfect. Let's do bookkeeper. So I'm actually just going to go right to the top here, the search, and you can see that I can search by job title, I can search by skill, and I can search by company. So we're first going to start with job title. So the first one that came in was bookkeeper. So let's do that. So I'm literally just going to search. And you can see that if I search by bookkeeper, I'm going to get a lot of results at first. So right now it's just defaulting to bookkeeper everywhere in Canada. Let's say I want a bookkeeper job specifically in Toronto. So I'm going to type in bookkeeper in Toronto. That takes me from almost 300 results to just 34 results. So that's narrowing it down a lot. And then I can narrow down by more things. So another thing that I always like to do when I am job searching or I'm job searching for a client is filter by date posted. So sometimes you'll see roles on company websites that were posted a month or more ago. And I always recommend avoiding, not necessarily avoiding, but not prioritizing roles that have been posted over 2 or 3 weeks ago. This is because, one, sometimes companies just literally refuse or forget to take down the job posting. So they could have hired somebody and they just forgot to hop on LinkedIn and take down the job posting. So they're no longer accepting applications or even looking at applications. And I don't want you to waste like an hour tailoring a resume and a cover letter to a role that has already been filled. Two, sometimes companies have a policy where they leave the job up until it's actually been filled. So as Tiffany was talking about earlier, some companies do 2-round interviews, 3-round interviews, sometimes even 4-round interviews. And so you could be applying for a role and they're already in 3rd-round interviews with a handful of people. Very, very unlikely that they're going to go back and start at interview 1 with new applicants, but maybe the HR policy is that they keep the position posted until it's been filled. So that being said, I always like when I'm searching on LinkedIn, honestly, if you're doing it every single day, like hopping on LinkedIn and checking the postings, you can do by 24 hours. If you don't want to go every day, I usually do a past week. That's usually my default. And you can see with bookkeeper, that's taken us from almost 300 results down to 12 just by filtering by location and filtering by past week. So now I can see, so for example, this one was posted 2 days ago. I very, very highly doubt that this company has started interviewing already. It's only been 2 days. So I would say if you apply to this, you have a very high chance of your resume at least getting looked at. This one, you can see, was posted 6 hours ago, so it is very recent. 1 day ago, 55 minutes ago. So these are the ones that I would recommend applying to. If you don't have a lot of results, that's when you can open it up to maybe the past month. But again, I wouldn't recommend applying to something that's been open for 1 month or more. Because like Tiffany just said in the chat, it's very likely the employer just forgot to take it down at that point and they're no longer looking at applications. Another thing that you can filter by is like experience level. So if you're looking for an internship, for example, or a more entry level role, you can filter by that. You can filter by salary, although oftentimes the salary is not actually posted in the job description. So I usually don't recommend sorting by salary. Can even sort by company. So if there's one specific company you want to work for, you can sort by company. If you want to work remotely or on-site or hybrid, you can filter by that. But definitely location and date posted are the two that I would recommend for sure. Another thing that I like to do on LinkedIn is instead of searching by job title, I like to search by skill. And this is because different companies will have different job titles for essentially the same role. So for example, let's say I know JavaScript. I don't know JavaScript. If you do, kudos to you. But let's say I know JavaScript and I want a job somewhere where I can use JavaScript. I can just go on LinkedIn and type in JavaScript in the search box. And this is going to give me every job posting on LinkedIn that has JavaScript listed somewhere in here. And you can see that there are tons of different job titles here. I've got application developer, I've got UI, React, and full stack developer, senior software developer, senior developer, or software engineer, training developer, tons and tons of different job titles, Android developer, Node developer. And if I had just gone on, for example, and searched web developer, a lot of these job titles would not be showing up. I would only be getting jobs that had web developer in the title. So I always like to search by skill as well, just because it widens your search a bit more and brings up roles that you wouldn't necessarily find if you were just using the job title. And again, JavaScript web developer roles are huge on LinkedIn, which is why we are sorting by JavaScript in Toronto past week, and we still have almost 2,000 results. So that's where you can kind of filter it down a little bit more to maybe 24 hours. You can filter by maybe you want something remote, and that's going to take us down to a little under 100 results, which is still a bit overwhelming. But again, that's because we are searching by skill, which really widens that net more. All right. I am now, I think, going to hop over to Indeed, just because I know we have a lot of questions coming in the chat. Tiffany, while I'm doing that, if you have any questions you'd like to answer.
Yes, I've been going through the chat here. So for the Q&A, we have a question. It says, I'm a project management second semester student, and they're looking to secure an internship from January to April. So one thing I want to be mindful of is in the month of December, everyone is basically on holiday mode, right? I find a lot of things, just like the summer, do slow down quite a bit. People are off for weeks at a time, vacation, whatever the case may be. So I would say from September to November, really work on building out your network. If you're in school, most likely there's like a program liaison, or a coordinator, a placement coordinator. Stay in contact with them. They might have a lot of connections. Make sure that you're constantly showing face as well so that they remember you. If they're having any conversations, they can put your name forward as well. And also ensure that you do have a strong LinkedIn presence. So all of the mandatory fields are filled out. If you know, just if you were like from a recruiter's point of view, taking a look at your profile. Do you have a profile picture, a banner, a strong headline, summary? Are your work experience and education up to date? So those are a few things that I would probably keep in mind if you're looking to secure an internship, because that would for you to start in January, you would probably want that secured maybe sometime in November or December. So those are just a few tips.
Perfect. Thank you, Tiffany. All right, I'm gonna hop over to LinkedIn, or sorry, to Indeed next, which is another very, very popular job board. And I need another job title, please, in the chat. Again, something you're looking for, or even just the first thing that comes to mind. Project coordinator, fantastic. Let's do that. So you can see that very similar to LinkedIn. We can search by job title, and then we can search by location. Maybe let's do something out west this time. Let's do a project coordinator in Vancouver and see what we find. All right. Something that I actually prefer Indeed for is you can filter. They have more options for filtering by date posted. So usually on Indeed, if this is the first time that I am looking, my default is usually the last 14 days. And I see kind of where that takes me. So I've gone from 100+ jobs to just over 50 jobs, which is a little bit more manageable. Again, if it was still more, you could filter by 7 days or even last 24 hours if you're somebody that's checking on a daily basis. You can also search by remote or hybrid on Indeed, by pay, by job type, by location, by job language. So Indeed has fewer filters than LinkedIn, but still a lot of really, really handy ones. And one thing that is cool about Indeed is that for location, you could actually search by remote, and you can just select remote as your location, which will bring all of the project coordinator roles that are remote. A lot of job sites will make you put in a location. So I think it's kind of cool that Indeed allows you to put remote as your location. One thing that I really want to show you about Indeed specifically is being able to take a look at the company page. So on LinkedIn, if you click the company page, it'll just take you to the company's LinkedIn page, which is essentially a social media page for the company, very similar to like Facebook or Instagram or the company website. It is run by the company, and they can post company content on their LinkedIn page. Indeed is a little bit different. Let's just click the first one that comes up here. You can see that if this is taking me to kind of like a home page about the company, and it's letting me know who the CEO is. It's telling me that the company size is around 11 to 50 employees. It kind of gives you an idea of revenue, industry, things like that. But something that I really like to look at is reviews. So Glassdoor does this as well. But you can actually read anonymous reviews by people that currently work or have previously worked at companies. Groom & Associates actually has a very high score, 4.4 out of 5 is very good. And you can see like great place to work, productive and flexible workplace. We get pros and cons. You can just read a little bit about what it is like to work there. You can see that Indeed does cap you. So it encourages people to post reviews of their company by kind of limiting how many reviews you can see until you post one of your own. I usually recommend leaving a review for a company that you previously worked at. Especially if it's a negative review, I would not recommend leaving a negative review for a company that you're currently working at, just because you never know, your employer might be able to connect the dots. Another very cool thing about Indeed is the salary tab, which is very, very good if you are job searching or if you have an interview coming up and you want to be prepared for that general, what is your salary expectation question? Indeed actually allows you to see, again, anonymous salaries. So you can see that if you work in IT support at Groom & Associates, you can maybe expect to make around $66,000 per year on average, and up to as high as $100,000 for more experienced roles, I'm assuming. And you can see that this was estimated from 13 different employees. So 13 people have anonymously reported that they work in IT support at Groom and Associates, and they have let them know, let Indeed know what they're making. So it kind of gives you an idea of the average salary at that company, which I think is fantastic. And Indeed also has a questions tab. So let's say you're really, really interested in working at this company, you could actually hop on LinkedIn and ask a question. So you could literally say, like, what is it like to work here? And Indeed will send an email notification out to all of the people who have told Indeed that they work at this company and let them know about your question. It's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever been like Google Maps somewhere, and then like a couple days or a week later, you get a notification from Google Maps that says like, hey, someone has a question about this location. Very similar on Indeed. If you ask a question, people who work there will get a notification, and they can anonymously answer your question. So even if you have like an interview coming up, you could go on Indeed and say, hey, I have an interview coming up for this role. What types of questions can I expect to be asked, or something like that. So a lot of really cool features on Indeed that LinkedIn doesn't necessarily have. Glassdoor has very similar questions, or very similar features to this as well. All right, any questions specifically about like job boards before I move on? Our next topic is actually networking, which I saw in the chat or in the Q&A. Somebody had a very upvoted question about networking. I think it was like, how can I get a referral, or how can I ask if a company is hiring? So we will talk about that next. And thank you for answering so many questions in the chat with me. I appreciate it. All right, so I have another question for all of you. You can just take a guess. What percentage do we think, what percentage of available positions are filled by somebody in a hiring manager or recruiter's network? So just a guess. 60%, we've got 80%. Any other guesses? 75%, 60 plus, 66.67%. I love how specific that is. 90, 55. Okay, we've got a variety. I will say that this is an estimate guess, or it's not a guess, it is based on research, but it is an estimate because it is very hard to find this number specifically, but it's actually around 85%. I have seen anything from like 80 to even up to 90%, but it's usually around 85% of available positions in the job market are filled by someone in the hiring manager or recruiter's network. This is because if you put yourselves in the shoes of an employer, as Tiffany was saying at the beginning, it's job seekers don't often do that. So I challenge you to put yourselves in the position of the employer or the HR manager or the recruiter that's hiring for a position. And let's say that you are hiring for a web developer, and you post it on LinkedIn, you post hiring for a junior web developer. Within the first 24 hours, you get 400 applications. As an employer or as a hiring manager, you're probably starting to feel very overwhelmed. How am I going to look at these 400 resumes? Maybe you look at a couple and the people just aren't qualified. They don't meet the requirements. Their resume isn't tailored at all for the position. They don't have the skills you're looking for. Probably starting to feel a little bit frustrated. And then an employee comes into your office who you know, you trust, has worked at your company for a couple of years, and they say, hey, I have a friend who I went to school with who has these skills, and I think they'd be a really good fit for the web developer position. As an employer, you're probably going to want to interview that person because they have come as a referral from an employee that you know and trust, and you're going to trust their judgment more than a bunch of people's resumes on LinkedIn that you don't know. So this is why referrals are super, super important. And as an employer, we kind of have that bias towards people that your employees already know and are recommending. It doesn't have to necessarily be an employee. It could be anybody. Even last time Tiffany and I did this workshop, somebody in the chat mentioned that they had gone to their public library a few times and were looking at books in like a specific section, and they kept running into somebody looking at books in the same section, and they started talking, and one day they were like, oh, I'm actually looking for an internship in this field. And the person they met at the library was like, oh, my company is actually hiring. And they were able to get a referral. So you never know. It doesn't have to be somebody you like went to school with or somebody you worked with previously. It can literally be somebody that you met at the library looking at books. So this is why super important to just let people know that you're job searching. Let people know that you're looking for a job. If you don't tell people, they will not know, and they will not know they won't know to refer you if they don't know that you're interested. There's also something called the hidden job market, which is essentially a group of jobs that are not being posted on job boards. So they're never posted on LinkedIn, they're never posted on Indeed. And this is because employers just let their employees know, hey, we need somebody for this role. And their employees say, oh, I know this person, I know this person. And they never actually have to post the job on Indeed or LinkedIn or any job board because they already have so many referrals that they don't need to open it publicly. This is happening actually in my workplace currently. We are looking for, it's just a part-time temporary position. So we don't really want to go through the whole process of like posting it online and everything like that. And one of my coworkers said, hey, I know this person that I think would be a great fit. And my manager just immediately called them for an interview because it's an easy way to hire somebody. And my manager trusts my coworker's judgment. And if my coworker says this person's a good fit, my manager trusts them and wants to interview that person. So I am sure now you are asking, okay, I have to get referrals for roles and I have to let people know I'm job searching, but how do I network and who do I network with? And how do I get these referrals? First is LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I find personally, is a little bit less intimidating way to start networking because you are behind your computer screen and you don't have to speak face to face with people. So even just starting to message people on LinkedIn, to connect with people on LinkedIn, I find is a really, really good starting point. Devon also has another workshop that is all about networking. So if networking is something that's new to you, I highly, highly recommend that workshop. We go in depth of like what to say in LinkedIn messages, how to keep the conversation going, things like that. So that is one that I would definitely recommend for sure. But long story short, just connect with people on LinkedIn. Connect with each other. If you find somebody in the chat that is in the same program as you or goes to the same school as you, look them up on LinkedIn, send them a connection request. Most of you are in school right now. Connect with your teachers on LinkedIn, connect with your professors on LinkedIn, alumni, so people who used to go to your school or used to be in your program, connect with them on LinkedIn, and just start messaging them. People are asking in the chat, how do I not get ignored on LinkedIn or how do I not get ghosted? And it's really just about what you say in your initial message. So if you start a conversation with somebody on LinkedIn by saying, hey, my name's Keelan and I really need a job. That was my cat, I'm sorry, she changed the slides. If you start a message on LinkedIn and say, hey, my name's Keelan, I really need a job. Is your company hiring? Can you refer me? You're probably going to get ignored. You're probably going to get ghosted because the person is just going to say, who is this person? Why should I refer you? I have no idea who you are. If you instead start a conversation, hey, Tiffany, my name is Keelan. I see that we both went to George Brown College and we studied the career development program. I was wondering if you would be open to answering a couple questions about job searching in the field or have any recommendations on how to get an entry-level job. It's an ask. It starts the conversation, but you're being friendly and you're not directly asking for like a referral or a job. Another thing you should not do is send your resume to somebody and say, hey, this is my resume, can you hire me? Again, they're not going to know what to do with that. Sometimes on LinkedIn, Tiffany, I think you said you get this as well too. People will just like send the resume and not say anything. Like it'll just be a resume.
Absolutely. Just a random PDF, no introduction. And I just usually respond back with a question mark because I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, like what do you want me to do with this, right? So yeah, don't just start off by saying, hey, I need a job. Hey, can you refer me? Ask them a little bit about what it's like working at the company. Introduce yourself. Hi, my name is so-and-so. I am currently studying this at this school. I saw that you work at this company. That's my dream company to work at. Can I ask you a couple questions about what it's like to work there? And once you start that conversation and you get that conversation going, that's when later on, after they know you a little bit, you can say, okay, I noticed that your company's actually hiring right now. I'm going to apply for this job. Do you have any advice? And that's when they might say, hey, actually, I can give you a referral or something like that because they know you at this point. And they might be a little bit more open to giving you a referral to that role. So again, we do have a workshop specifically all about networking, and I would highly recommend going to a networking workshop. Another thing that you can do is an informational interview, which is essentially where you sit down with somebody, you have a phone call with somebody, or you meet in person or do a video call with somebody who already works in the industry or already works in a job that you hope to work in. And you literally just sit down with them for 15, 20 minutes and ask them questions about what it's like. Called it an informational interview because you're essentially gathering information about this person. I actually got one of my very first jobs, actually my very first job as a career coach through an informational interview. So when I was still in school studying to be a career coach, I reached out to somebody through LinkedIn and I asked them, it was somebody who had been working as a career coach for, I think it was like 10 years at that point, and they did the same program that I was currently in school for. So I introduced myself. I asked if we could have an informational interview, and I sat down with that person for, I think it was like 15, 20 minutes, just asked them some questions, got to know them afterwards, kept in touch with them. And a few months later, after I graduated, I actually saw a job opening at the company that that person worked for. I applied for the job. I reached out to that person and I said, hey, I just graduated. I applied for this role. And because of that informational interview I had conducted months prior, this person actually went to the executive director and said, hey, I know this girl. She seems really eager and excited about working in the industry. We talked a few months back. I think you should interview her. And it worked. I got an interview and I ended up getting the job. So sometimes things like networking and informational interviews don't pay off immediately. It might take a few months to build that networking relationship, but you never know, down the line, it might turn into a job or a good opportunity. All right, so let's recap before we go into Q&A. We've got about 10 minutes left and I want to save some time for questions. So we have reviewed the hiring process in Canada, everything from the ATS to the initial interview to getting references. We've looked at popular job boards in Canada, and we have also talked about the importance of networking and strategies to network, whether that's on LinkedIn or through informational interviews. Before I open it to Q&A, I do want to let you know that unfortunately we will not be able to answer all of the questions that have come in because we only have 10 minutes left. But if you would like all of your questions guaranteed to be answered, you can book a one-on-one coaching session with Tiffany or me or any of the other amazing Devant career coaches. I will post the link in the chat, but it's just devant.ca/services. You can book a 1-hour career coaching session where you can talk to a career coach of your choice for 1 hour and ask them anything about job searching. Whether you want a resume review, you need advice on how to network, you need help setting up your LinkedIn profile, all of that stuff. Thank you, Tiffany. So we have that. We have a LinkedIn audit. If you're specifically interested in upgrading your LinkedIn profile, you can book the LinkedIn audit and get custom advice from a career coach covering exactly how you can improve your LinkedIn profile and your LinkedIn presence. And if you're looking for a resume or cover letter, we also have those services. Remember that if you are currently a student at a college or university, if your college has partnered with Devant, you may actually be eligible for free Devant career coaching, depending on what level of service your college or university has partnered with Devant for. So reach out to student services or just reach out to Devant and ask if those supports are available to you. All right, let's hop over to Q&A. Tiffany, if you want to get it started, I know you've been looking at the chat more than I have for the last 10 minutes.
Yes. So a lot of the questions that I am noticing is, of course, how to find a job, how to secure a placement, how to secure a co-op. But there was one question that did stand out a little bit to me, just with, what we've been reading on social media and on the news. And it is due to all the immigrant changes, would the majority of the international students not be considered for a job position? So that's definitely a really good question. I understand the concern behind that as well. It is a little bit tricky as well. I would go ahead and say no, just because of the experience that you come with, the education that you come with, the qualifications, the certifications, all of those are relevant when you are applying for opportunities. Um, However, I do notice, and I'm only saying this because I've worked in the field for a little while, all employers have some form of a bias, whether it be an employment gap. You could be out of the workforce for 1 year or 2 years, and that's something they would view in a negative light. So they might, look at that as something. They might look at you working one job a year as something negative. So they all do, unfortunately, take these biases into account, which is why we really want to focus on making sure the resume is like our ticket to getting to that next stage. So again, really, when it comes to your summary and the highlights of qualifications, ensuring that it aligns perfectly with the job posting. You're doing your research as well. When it comes to interviews, you're touching base on star stories. I had an employer who specifically requested that the alumni or client brush up on their star stories. So when you're explaining your answers, that there's a little bit of a method behind it. So they can fully understand start to end how you're able to support.
Amazing. I was typing an answer, but I think I'm just going to answer it out loud because it's easier. But the question in the chat is, how do you recommend connecting with senior folks or C-suite people at a company you're targeting? What I was typing in the chat is that these folks are often just swamped with LinkedIn messages, because as soon as you put like CEO or director or founder in your LinkedIn profile, you get an influx of messages. I know Rod, the CEO, the founder of Devant, has said that he's overwhelmed with messages. A lot of them are spam, because spam people look for things like director, CEO. A CEO at a company that I worked with previously showed me her LinkedIn once, and she actually had over 7,000 LinkedIn messages. And she told me there was a point where she would try to respond to them and she just gave up, because she would reply to one and 10 more would come in. So what she actually recommended, this is advice directly from a CEO at a former company that I worked at, is to try to find an email. So she said that if she received a LinkedIn message, 90% of the time she would never read it, but she checked every single email that came into her inbox because she was the CEO and because that was her job, right? And emails are usually pretty easy to find. Like, it's usually like first name dot last name at company.ca or something like that. You can always try like multiple ones, like first name at company.ca, first name dot last name at company.com or whatever. There are also a lot of tools that help you find emails. But worst case scenario, it bounces back or you don't get a reply. But that's usually a good way of getting in touch with people, especially those like C-suite people that are very hard to get a hold of on LinkedIn. That being said, please don't like spam their inbox and send them a billion emails. Again, that is another way you probably will get ignored. But if you just send like one really well-written email, you never know, you might get a response and they might be like flattered at the effort that you took to reach out to them. They probably don't get a lot of emails from people who want to work at that company like that. So yeah. What's next? We've got a couple minutes left, maybe one more. You mentioned Devant works with companies to connect to job seekers. Is there a link or web page? Yes, so we were talking about it a little bit earlier, but one partnership that we have that is excellent is Kibby. So it is, I will pop the link in the chat right now. But Kibby has, we've actually recently partnered with Kibby. Kibby is a job board that is fantastic. It is specifically tailored for international students. So employers who post on this are very, very open to hiring international students. You can change the language of Kibby to a bunch of different languages, so you can read it in the language of your choice. And it's something that I would really, really recommend for international job seekers. They have an app, they have a website, the app is fantastic. So it's basically like a LinkedIn or Indeed, but you know that all of the employers on there are very, very open to hiring international students. So that's a great one. All right, everybody, it is 8 o'clock. I gotta go give my cat some attention. She is sad and lonely. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Please feel free to join Devant events in the future. I'll screen share quickly and just let you know what events are coming up. So next week we have a career coach Q&A. So if your question didn't get answered tonight, I would highly recommend going to that. It is literally just 1 hour with 2 Devant career coaches, and they just answer all of the questions that come in the chat. So if you didn't get your question answered, that's one I recommend. September 25th is the immigration Q&A. We have a wonderful lawyer who joins our sessions. Her name is Elizabeth Long. She's an immigration lawyer in Canada. She is fantastic. She always covers one topic for the first 30, 40 minutes of the webinar, and then she opens it up to Q&A. Lawyers are expensive, so I always recommend going to this because you basically get a free opportunity to ask a lawyer a question. October 2nd is Employer Insights Ask a Recruiter. So if you were wondering how to get the attention of recruiters, that's one I would recommend. And then October 9th is our live resume clinic. So if you were working on your resume, you can come to this event. And actually, if you sign up for this event early enough, you can actually send your resume in to get answered or to get reviewed live during the session. We block out all of your personal information, don't worry. But that is a chance to get a free resume review. All right, everybody, it is 8:01. Thank you so much for joining us. And please feel free to connect with Tiffany and me on LinkedIn. And we hope to see you soon.
Hi, everyone. Have a good
Bye,
night.
everybody. Good night.